Amid the rolling hills of Tuscany and the glimmering canals of Venice, the Forrester clan's latest venture, an orchestrated reunion party for Brooke Logan and Ridge Forrester, had seemed at once triumphant and precarious, a testament to the family's resilience and to Eric Forrester's unyielding devotion to the love story he'd nurtured since childhood. Yet, in a moment that stunned guests and left wine glasses trembling on silver trays, Eric collapsed without warning in the grand ballroom of an Italian villa, his tall frame slumping to the marble floor as the strains of a string quartet lingered in the air. Gasps punctuated the sudden silence. Media magnates and fashion icons froze mid-toast, servers dropped trays of champagne flutes, and Ridge raced to his father's side, brushing aside concerned staff as Donna Logan, visibly shaken, her brow slick with perspiration, rushed to cradle Eric's head. What was meant to be a celebratory gathering of second chances descended in an instant into chaos as Brooke covered her mouth in horror. Taylor Hayes and Steffi Forrester exchanged panicked glances, and Quinn Fuller, long banished from the inner sanctum of Forrester Creations, watched from the shadows with a predatory gleam in her eye. Within hours, beneath the antiseptic lights of a private Florentine clinic, Eric's diagnosis delivered fresh tremors of uncertainty through the Forrester empire. A rare, progressive neurological complication had robbed him of the mental acuity and motor skills necessary to manage the company he built from scratch, and more crucially, left him unable to sign legal documents. The once impenetrable Big E, whose signature had authorized countless multi-million-dollar design deals, fashion show contracts, and even philanthropic endowments, now faced an invisible threat from within his own neurons. An insidious condition that threatened to strip him of both voice and vote in the company he once ruled unchallenged. Doctors whispered in hushed tones of treatment options that carried unpredictable side effects, of high-cost experimental therapies that might slow the disease but offered no cure, and of a looming guardianship battle that could shift control of Forrester Creations into uncertain hands if Eric could not be declared legally incapacitated. Each prognosis landed on Donna Logan like a physical blow. Her beloved father's spirit, once as steady as bedrock, seemed to tremble under the weight of this betrayal by his own body. As news of Eric's condition spread through the Forrester boardroom via encrypted messages and clandestine phone calls, Donna wrestled with the decision to keep the diagnosis under wraps. Publicly, she posted reassurances on the company's internal network. Eric was resting comfortably, she wrote, his health stable, urging colleagues to stay focused on the upcoming spring collection. Privately, however, she trembled each time a Forrester VP entered her office under the pretense of discussing design assets or marketing budgets, fearing that any slip of her tongue would unleash panic and spark a feeding frenzy of corporate vultures circling her father's legacy. She was determined to shield Eric's family from the harsh glare of tabloid headlines and Wall Street speculation, at least until she could explore every medical avenue and potentially stave off the worst of the disease. Yet secrets have a way of unraveling, and in Los Angeles, especially within the cutthroat world of fashion and family fortunes, no buffer is thick enough to hold back the tide of ambition. Enter Quinn Fuller, the mercurial force whose return to the Forrester fold had long been predicted but never welcomed. Quinn, whose own past is woven with schemes and betrayals, and who once orchestrated a hostile takeover bid in collusion with Bill Spencer, saw Eric's sudden vulnerability as an opportunity too lucrative to ignore. Whispering promises of renewed profitability and steady hands at the helm of Forrester Creations, Quinn maneuvered to position herself as the company's savior. With veiled threats and insinuations, she reminded board members of looming financial obligations tied to Eric's name, endorsements, legacy contracts, even philanthropic trusts that required an active signature to remain valid. Without Eric's legal imprimatur, these ventures would crumble, dragging the company's valuation and reputation down with them. Quinn's voice, honey-coated and persuasive, echoed through the corridors of power as she began to whisper of stability and sound governance, planting the seed that the only way forward was to install a legal guardian to manage Eric's affairs. And that, in her view, there was no one better suited for the role than herself. Quinn's first move was to corner Eric's private physician, Dr. Gregory Mancini, a man whose loyalty to the Forrester patriarch had been unwavering. Until Quinn turned up at his villa in the Veneto with an airtight non-disclosure agreement and enough financial incentive to tinge his professional judgment. Under the weight of Quinn's manipulation, soft threats of litigation if Dr. Mancini withheld the medical records and promise of career advancement and ethical indemnification if he complied. Mancini found himself signing over Luna pink-redacted charts and confidential neurologic assessments, granting Quinn's legal counsel full access to the information needed to petition the court for guardianship. Quinn dropped these documents on Donna's desk one evening at Forrester Creations, her heels clicking ominously as she declared, "You'll want to read this before it becomes public record." The ramifications were immediate and far-reaching. With formal medical proof of Eric's incapacitation on file, Quinn could fast-track a hearing to appoint herself co-guardian, granting her authority over financial decisions, design approvals, and even the power to hire and fire top executives. Donna's horror at Quinn's maneuver was eclipsed only by her fury. She confronted Quinn in a tense showdown near the company's flagship couture salon, voice trembling with righteous indignation as she accused Quinn of exploiting a man's suffering for personal gain. Quinn, with icy composure, reminded Donna that the Stark law and corporate statutes required a guardian the moment a principal loses the capacity to sign legal documents. No petition, no guardian. "I'm not here to steal anything," Quinn intoned softly. "I'm here to protect what your father built. With every day that goes by without a legal guardian, the company is at risk of insolvency." Her argument, dressed in the language of prudence and protection, struck a chilling chord. After all, Quinn had studied corporate law during her stint overseas, and her knowledge of power of attorney statutes was formidable. The longer Donna hesitated, the more Quinn's narrative gained traction among skeptical board members who remembered that Forrester Creations, like any dynasty, needed a clear chain of command to survive inevitable crises. In response, Donna convened an emergency family council at the Forrester estate in Los Angeles, assembling Ridge, Brooke, Taylor, Steffi, and even the reluctant Bill Spencer to discuss a strategy to counter Quinn's rise. Ridge, fueled by a mixture of loyalty and lingering resentment toward Quinn's past betrayals, called for immediate petitions on behalf of Donna, aiming to appoint her as co-guardian alongside a neutral trustee, someone with no personal stake in the family, to ensure Eric's wishes remained paramount. Brooke, her soft brown eyes blazing with protective determination, argued that Eric's original will explicitly forbade his medical decisions from being outsourced to anyone outside the Forrester bloodline, citing a codicil she believed was lodged in the company's vault. Taylor, ever the voice of reason, proposed a compromise. Temporary joint guardianship under the court's supervision, paired with sealed financial oversight until Eric's condition could be reevaluated by independent neurologists. Steffi, conversely, grew impatient with the deliberations. She believed the board should simply rally behind Ridge's unilateral petitions, securing one signature at a time to keep Quinn at bay. Meanwhile, Quinn wasted no time cultivating allies within the company's executive ranks. She reinstated former staffers who owed her favors, reminding them of past professional slights and dangling the threat of mass layoffs if they failed to endorse her guardianship bid. She whispered reassurances to key investors, men and women whose capital had floated the Forrester brand through recessions and market crashes, portraying herself as the stabilizing force capable of guiding the company through Eric's medical setback. Quinn's charm offensive worked wonders. Within days, a critical mass of board members submitted informal letters of support to the county clerk, urging an expedited guardianship hearing in Santa Monica. Quinn also tapped into her network of legal allies, commissioning filings that emphasized Eric's imminent decline and the urgent need for a responsible guardian to oversee existing contracts, especially those related to Brookridge Ventures and Forrester's covert expansion into European markets. At the heart of this escalating battle was Eric himself, recuperating in a private wing of his company's namesake estate, surrounded by crisp white linens and a rotating schedule of specialists. Though his speech was slurred and his memory sporadic, the old patriarch remained lucid enough to sense the growing rift around him. In moments of clarity, he summoned his closest family members to his bedside, gasping out scraps of advice. Protect the legacy. Brooke, never let Quinn define Forrester. Donna, holding his hand as tears welled in her eyes, vowed to guard his final wishes with her life. Ridge, kneeling beside the bed, pressed his father's hand to his forehead, offering strength through silent solidarity. Brooke, eyes rimmed red, whispered promises of loyalty that transcended boardroom politics. Yet, even as they rallied, Quinn's legal clock ticked inexorably toward the hearing that could hand her the keys to the kingdom. As whispers circulated of the imminent court date, August 18, 2025, tension in the Forrester boardroom peaked. Mancini's sealed reports, attesting to neurological degeneration beyond temporary impairment, and a scathing opinion letter from a medical legal expert she'd retained. The two sides traded volleys through legal memos and pretrial hearings, each brief more scathing than the last, painting the opposing counsel as either enablers of ailing hubris or heartless usurpers hungry for power. Caught between these titanic forces, the employees of Forrester Creations found their desks awash in memos and memos about memos, confusion and fear eroding morale. Designers abandoned sketches mid-sketch, marketing teams paused campaigns for the spring line, and seamstresses whispered in corridors about what would happen to their jobs if Quinn won. The electric atmosphere of the company's Los Angeles headquarters, once a hub of creative synergy, now crackled with the static charge of corporate warfare. In the shadow of these boardroom battles, Quinn prepared her public entrance, secretly arranging for a surprise gala to unveil her vision for the future of Forrester Creations. Invitations, penned in the company's signature gold script, were sent to high-profile fashion editors, socialites, and influencers. A new era at Forrester. Join Quinn Fuller as guardian of innovation. Meanwhile, Donna organized a private luncheon for the original Silver Forresters, designers and executives who had stood by Eric through recessions and design flops, pleading for their support in a last-ditch effort to preserve her father's autonomy. As the day of the court hearing neared, every passing hour seemed to echo with the gravity of Eric's fate, and with it, the fate of the Forrester legacy. Would Quinn's strategic machinations win her the guardianship she coveted, allowing her to reshape the company in her own image? Or would Donna's impassioned defense of her father's wishes preserve the Forrester dynasty as Eric intended, thwarting Quinn's return to power? The verdict would not only decide who held the pen to sign the contracts, but also determine the direction of every future runway show, every design collection, and every Forrester family reunion. For in a world where legacy and love are inseparable, the war for guardianship is also a war for the very soul of an empire. Deacon Fulton's heart pounded in his chest as he stared at Sheila Carter Sharp, her cold eyes gleaming with that familiar mixture of cunning and desperation. For months, he had convinced himself that siding with Sheila would finally elevate him out of the shadows. He'd imagined the thrill of collaborating with a master manipulator, of finally feeling powerful instead of powerless, of securing his place at the table instead of lurking on the margins. But tonight, as the moonlight slanted through the tall windows of Lee Finnegan's hidden sanctuary, Deacon realized with a jolt of icy dread that Sheila's plans far exceeded anything he had ever imagined. She intended not merely to threaten Lee with exposure or extortion, but to snatch Luna Nozawa, Lee's comatose daughter, from her mother's arms and use the innocent child as collateral in a grand bargain for her own freedom. The sheer brutality of the scheme stunned him. To kidnap a sleeping child, to weaponize a helpless life in order to negotiate with the very families who had once incarcerated Sheila, to transform a family's most sacred vulnerability into a pawn in her vendetta, this was a step too far, even for Deacon's stained moral code. His pulse thundered as he backed away, voice trembling as he demanded, "Sheila, you can't be serious. This is monstrous." But Sheila, ever the predator, only smiled, shifting a black leather glove off one hand and tapping a manicured finger against the steel door handle of Lee's makeshift intensive care room. "Deacon," she purred, "you've always known I play for keeps. Luna is the ultimate leverage. You want to help me? Then you'll help me secure her. You'll deliver her from Lee's clutches, and once I have her, I dictate the terms of my release and yours." He pressed a hand to his temple, the world tilting around him. He had allied himself with Sheila, convinced her whispers of loyalty and shared ambition, but this was beyond the pale. If he went through with it, he'd cross a line even he couldn't return from. Yet if he defied her, he risked her wrath, and being on the wrong side of Sheila Carter never ended well. In that moment of paralyzing indecision, Deacon's thoughts turned to Bill Spencer. Bill, with his ruthless business acumen and vast resources, had more than once proven capable of solving problems that ordinary men couldn't even confront. Bill's steel nerve, immense wealth, and connections in law enforcement made him the only man Deacon could trust to turn the tide against Sheila. At the same time, he thought of Taylor Hayes, whose compassion and unwavering sense of justice might temper Bill's merciless streak. He pictured the two of them working together, Bill's cunning, Taylor's moral compass, a holy triangle of power, conviction, and strategy that, he hoped, could protect Luna and shield Lee from Sheila's grasp. Late that night, hidden in the shadows of Il Giardino, Deacon dialed Bill Spencer's unlisted number, his voice hoarse as he revealed Sheila's plan in brutal detail, warning Bill that the child's very life was at stake. Bill, always the pragmatist, listened in silence, his silence more terrifying than anger. Minutes later, as Deacon hung up, he placed a second call to Taylor Hayes. He knew Taylor would be horrified, but he banked on her willingness to fight for a child's safety, on her loyalty to Finn and Lee, and on her desire to prevent yet another tragedy in the tangled Forrester-Logan Spencer saga. When Taylor answered, her calm, measured tone gave way to alarm and resolve, and she promised to mobilize legal counsel and law enforcement liaisons at first light. The three of them, Deacon the reluctant informant, Bill the strategist, and Taylor the moral center, formed an uneasy alliance bound by a shared goal: keep Luna safe, stop Sheila's kidnapping plot, and protect Lee from the fallout. But Deacon knew that alliances in this world came at a price. He couldn't simply offer his loyalty to Bill and Taylor without extracting his own bargain. And so, with a mixture of trepidation and steely ambition, he laid out his demand. Bill Spencer, in exchange for risking his influence and resources to thwart Sheila and protect Luna, must guarantee Deacon's restaurant, Illinois Giardino, a nationwide franchise, to transform it from a small, lovingly tended family eatery into a coast-to-coast culinary empire, and thereby elevate its founder from ex-convict to gastronomy titan. Deacon had long dreamed of legitimate success, having fought tooth and nail to build Il Giardino into a neighborhood landmark where patrons reveled in the warmth of authentic Italian fare. Yet he had always been haunted by his past convictions, by the stigma that clung to his name and the barriers it erected between him and true prosperity. Now, with Bill's banking connections and promotional muscle, Deacon envisioned launching Il Giardino franchises in every major city, hosting celebrity chefs in glossy TV commercials, and seeing his family's red and white checkered tablecloths spread across America. Taylor's gasp echoed through the line as she absorbed the audacity of his proposal, but Bill, ever calculating, paused only a beat before responding. He reminded Deacon that his own power would derive from the same resources that would be deployed to stop Sheila: campaign funds, legal teams, private security, and that turning those resources toward launching a national restaurant chain would be an enormous undertaking, potentially detracting from the urgent crisis at hand. Deacon, voice steady but urgent, insisted that Bill's commitment must cover both fronts. Dispatching every available asset to intercept Sheila and ensure Luna's safety, and concurrently greenlighting Il Giardino's expansion plan, with franchise agreements, branding strategies, and capital investment organized immediately. Bill weighed the proposition, his mind churning through profit projections, leverage opportunities, and the optics of backing an ex-con's culinary dreams. By dawn, the unwilling triumvirate had sketched out a plan. Bill would leverage his private security network to shadow Sheila's known associates, intercept her communications, and coordinate with a specialized FBI task force investigating interstate child abduction. Taylor, drawing on her medical and psychological expertise, would collaborate with federal child welfare officials to ensure Luna's well-being if she were extricated, and would provide expert testimony at any legal proceedings. Deacon, in turn, would serve as the linchpin, maintaining contact with Sheila just long enough to feed false information, leading her into FBI ambushes, while ensuring that Lee and Finn, kept in the dark for their own safety, remained protected by Bill's discreet surveillance. Simultaneously, Deacon would supply Bill's financial division with projected profit and loss statements, franchise development plans, and branding proposals for Il Giardino, blueprints primed for immediate rollout once the crisis had passed. As the sun rose over Los Angeles, the stakes could